What's up, Bills Mafia? Ryan Thomas here, back again for another Buffalo Bills post-game show. Typically, I love to do these shows right after the game, but I was out. I was having a good time celebrating the Buffalo Bills' bounce-back victory against the Cleveland Browns in Detroit. As the Bills were forced to move from Orchard Park to Detroit. We know what took place this past week with the Buffalo Bills, and having to play that game in Detroit Sunday, was eye-opening, just based on everything that we dealt with leading up to this week, especially in the South Towns. I live in the North Towns of Western New York, so I didn't get hammered with snow in the form and fashion that the people that lived in the South Towns did until Saturday night rolling in, or Friday night rolling into Saturday morning, and then Saturday throughout the rest of the day, things were pretty good snow-wise. So to all the Western New Yorkers out there that we're in the South Towns, I'm glad that I'm hoping that you guys are all safe and sound, and you guys got the chance to enjoy the Buffalo Bills bounce-back victory, as I like to call it, against the Cleveland Browns. I want to remind you guys that the Thomas Take Sports Podcast is available on all visual and audio podcasting platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, you name it. Anywhere you want to tune in and listen, you'll be able to hear this episode on the audio side of things, and I really appreciate the support from Bills Mafia throughout this entire season. It's been a hell of a ride this season indeed. We've had some ups, we've had some downs. The downs have been unexpected. The downs have been frustrating, but the ups have been fun. The ups have been great. And this is where I tell you guys, fire away some comments in the comment section below. I will be sure to get to your comments throughout the rest of this show. So fire away. Throw them at me. Let me hear them. Let me hear what your thoughts are on this Buffalo Bills game. We got a lot to discuss. I have a lot to discuss within this game tonight. Taking place coming up soon, the 49ers and the 49ers and the Cardinals, right? 49ers and the Cardinals tonight. So before that game takes place, I'll be sure to give you guys all my thoughts on this game between the Bills and the Browns. So let's get right to it. This was without a doubt a bounce-back effort from the Buffalo Bills, a much-needed bounce-back victory for the Bills as the Bills beat the Browns by a score of 31-23, moving to 7-3. Tyler Bass with the boot on the day, a career-best day for Tyler Bass, and truthfully, I take that one side of the coin compared to the other. Great day for Tyler Bass, right? But I don't want to say necessarily a bad day for the offense. The amount of times that we were in great field position to get it into the red zone area, and we were unable to do that fully, from that 40-30, trying to get into the red zone inside the 20. We couldn't get inside the 20. We had to rely on Tyler Bass to kick some long field goals for us. But to me, when you're in that situation where Cleveland's defense did hold up in those scenarios, you're in a dome, you have a great kicker, you don't scoff at the idea of Tyler Bass kicking a 56-yard field goal. He was able to get it done. Great day for Tyler Bass, but there were, for sure, struggles within this game, and I want to talk about the struggles, mainly within the first half. And it was offensively and defensively that we saw struggles. Wasn't just one side of the ball or the other. This team was struggling. I think some of it did make me think, man, this team looks really slow. They look a little lackadaisical. They look like they're just not, their heads aren't in it. They don't look right. A lot of that had to do with the lack of a practice schedule that they had this week because of the storm. Talked about it during the broadcast as far as having only one real walkthrough sort of a practice this week. And that walkthrough was about a half hour to 40 minutes long, led by Sean McDermott. Outside of that, they met on Zoom and had a Zoom meeting. Not much of a practice this week, but all in all, it didn't matter. They were still able to get the W, but those first half struggles are something to mention to start off the show tonight. First half struggles, offensive struggles. Josh Allen struggled. And this goes back to a few weeks ago. We know he had an elbow injury. We know that the elbow injury was of concern for a time, and then Allen worked his way into the situation as far as playing and getting back into the lineup. Credit to him putting together the quick rehab to feel good enough to go out there and play his best, or to attempt to play his best. But Josh Allen's not 100% right now. Josh Allen's struggling, I think, because he's not 100%, and because I think not only is he not 100%, but when he does play out there at, let's just say, 50 to 60%, maybe 70% on certain angles of passing the football, we see those mistakes, and when those mistakes happen, a little bit of panic sets in with Allen, and he makes more mistakes. That's what we've seen at least this season when times have been tough for Josh Allen. But I do think in the first half there were some real struggles, and I made no bones about it when I said that Josh Allen looked terrible. He did look terrible. There was a lot of moments in the game where I'm scratching my head saying this guy is just off. He's not on point. Something's just not right with him. And that something being not right is the elbow, I think. And playing through it, you know you're not going to get the best Josh Allen that we know can go out there and be the best. You know, better than Mahomes, better than Herbert, better than Burrow, better than Lamar. We know Josh Allen at his best is pretty damn special. So he did struggle. And defensively on third down, there was a ton of struggles early in this one. 2 3rd and 11s where Jacoby Brissett was able to extend a play and run for a first down. Third and 11, I should say, where Jacoby Brissett was able to find the intended receiver and convert on that one. And really defensively, not just on third down, but defensively, this team is struggling due to the fact that they are missing key figures on this defense. Micah Hyde being out, man up, next man up or step aside. Micah Hyde out with a legitimate long-term, season-ending injury. Trey White, I don't know what's going on with Trey White. And I know that he's hurt. I know that he's coming back from an ACL injury. He was hurt. He's coming back. He's been on the active 53-man roster. But these last 3 weeks have shown the Bills aren't necessarily going up against the cream of the crop at the wide receiver position. And I'm not saying that, I did have any disrespect for Donovan Peoples-Jones or Amari Cooper. Those guys can play. Amari Cooper had a good day. Jacoby Brissett, frankly, 300 yards of passing offense. He had a good day as well. But the only legitimate wide receivers that this team has played over the course of this season are Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Justin Jefferson. Those are the three that I would, circle, jot down at the very least, and say that those are three elite receivers that we've played. And yet, we've seen this group, Kaiir Elam, Christian Benford, when Elam has been out there, we'll throw him in there. Elam hasn't been out there these last few weeks, but when he is out there, Elam, we'll mention him, Christian Benford, Dane Jackson, those guys have had to step up in much, much bigger roles than they ever anticipated due to Trey White not being ready to come back yet. And I know that Sean McDermott practices what he preaches and that he will play when he is ready. He is not ready. I understand that. I know why he's not ready, but I think we're getting to that point where why is he not ready yet? I'm there. I'm at that point where it's like I understand he's coming back from an injury, but he's been on the active roster, elevated and then inactive, but we need him. And for as hard as these guys have played, Christian Benford as well as Dane Jackson, Xavier Rhodes making his first appearance as a Buffalo Bill as well, we need Trey White out there. We need to get him out there. He provides a different dynamic to this defense, and we saw that dynamic come back a little bit with the return of two key players. Not only were we without Trey White all season long, but in portions of this season, we've been without Jordan Poyer, we've been without Matt Milano, and I already mentioned Micah Hyde. But Jordan Poyer and Matt Milano coming back, that made a massive impact to this defense. It gives this defense a little bit of an edge that it's desperately needed, that Von Miller is provided. But you have Von Miller out there, you have Jordan Poyer out there, Matt Milano out there, all healthy. You saw a much stingier run defense in the second half than what you saw in the first half, I thought. And you saw a much better pass defense than what you saw in the first half for sure. Really, the run defense in this one was as good as it could possibly be, despite allowing a couple ridiculous runs to Jacoby Brissett. Kareem Hunt had a few decent pickups. But Nick Chubb, arguably the best running back in the National Football League, on the day held under 50 yards. So good on the Buffalo Bills rushing defense, run defense from stopping the run on Nick Chubb and the Cleveland Browns. But what has me most excited for this 3-6 victory by the Buffalo Bills, what has me most juiced up, is the fact that every single week, I'd want to say for the last, 2-3 seasons, even with the now New York Giants, quote-unquote, great head coach Brian Daboll, as a former offensive coordinator of the Buffalo Bills, even when he was calling the plays in this offense, I didn't necessarily see a willingness to even create a run game or to give opportunities in between the tackles to previous running backs, whether it's Devin Singletary or the now Indianapolis Colt Zach Moss, and some of the other guys that have come into the room as a running back of the Buffalo Bills over the last 2-3 seasons. But James Cook and Devin Singletary, 29 carries, 178 yards combined. That is what the doctor ordered. And the doctor is Dr. Ryan Thomas. I've wanted to see James Cook and Devin Singletary get their touches for the longest time. And I thought, hey, here we are again. Better late than never. And here we are again. It took us a double-digit amount of weeks. Last season to establish any sort of a run game. But this run game with James Cook, with Devin Singletary, and I will throw in there Nyheim Hines, who wasn't necessarily used in the run game, but was a much-needed addition to the return game of the Buffalo Bills and did provide the Bills with great field position a time or two throughout this one. We'll throw him in there as well. I want to see more Nyheim Hines. I want to see more of James Cook. I want to see more of Devin Singletary moving on from this victory, because those three players, I should say, were a big, big reason. Josh Allen was struggling, not 100%, whether it's physically or mentally, and maybe even both. And he had the opportunity to kind of say, okay, let's put this game into the hands of some of my guys, some of my playmakers. James Cook, Devin Singletary, Nyheim Hines, they did their thing. And I will say, there is a glaring issue with this Buffalo Bills team that I don't think is being talked about nearly enough. And that glaring issue is the lack of wide receiver production outside of Stephon Diggs. Since the Pittsburgh Steelers victory a few weeks back, where Gabe Davis had that 98-yard touchdown, Gabe Davis has somewhat fell off the radar. He's not on the radar anymore as far as a wide receiver 2 for this offense. And I love Gabe Davis. I think Gabe Davis is awesome. But this has not been his year. He's got about 18, 19 drops. He's been an inconsistent wide receiver 2 from a production standpoint. And beyond that, you got Diggs, you got Davis. Jamison Crowder going down definitely hurt the slot wide receiver role within this offense, because I felt like he was really taking the reins of that in the absence of Cole Beasley, who the Bills, let go, and I understood that decision fully. But Isaiah McKenzie hasn't exactly been on point either in that role of stepping up. Hasn't really looked like he has the last few years, and maybe it's from a standpoint of he's not getting the targets as much as he was before, and he's just not in rhythm like he was before in seasons past. I don't know, but I do know that Gabe Davis and Isaiah McKenzie and some of the wide receivers haven't been productive. And if that's the case, if those guys are having a hard time getting going, you got to find another way to get the offense moving. And for the Buffalo Bills to give the ball to James Cook and Devin Singletary and really wear down the Cleveland Browns defense, I loved it. And I think that this is a point of emphasis that I want to make on the show. The run game opens up the pass game. It always has. It always will. This team is built to fire the football from the quarterback to Diggs, quarterback to Dawson Knox. Gabe Davis is a great player, don't get me wrong, but something has been missing there. And I think goes beyond just saying, okay, let's go out and add Odell Beckham Jr. Trust me, I'd love to have OBJ on this team as much as anybody, but we got to find out what the problem is without just saying, okay, we just need a better player at the position. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think they got to go into the film room, look some things over, figure out what plays need to be called to put these players in the best position to succeed. Because right now, outside of Stephon Diggs, and even Diggs didn't even have a target in the first quarter of the game, first half of the game, I believe. You guys can correct me on that if I'm wrong. But that needs to change. We need consistent production from the wide receiver position, or you find alternative pieces of the puzzle that will allow this offense to move the chains. Running the ball is a new wrinkle to this offense. I think getting the ball out into the backfield, out of the flat, is another dimension that I want to see expanded upon. More screens, more elusiveness from James Cook, because he was unleashed. Over 80 yards on the ground, over 100 yards of total offense. I really liked what I saw from James Cook, and this was the first sense of a running back that could provide that week in, week out statistical production if he's consistently used in this form and fashion. If he's not, then he's not going to get better. He's just going to be stagnant, and it's not going to work. You got to get these guys touches. You got to work these guys into the offense. You can't just say, "Well, they haven't really been productive." Well, no one's productive when you don't get them the ball. No one's productive when the ball's not in their hands. You can't produce without the football in your hands. So, especially if you're running back. So that's my take on that. I really love to see the new look Buffalo Bills offense. This was a big point of emphasis for me. It's been for a long time, and I really hope Ken Dorsey continues to allow that run game to evolve. Build upon what you've already started this last week. Say, okay, we need to make that more of a point of emphasis within this offense. It's going to be very interesting to see how this season continues to shake out, because the Bills are 7-3. The Kansas City Chiefs are 8-3. Can the Buffalo Bills at some point hope and pray that the Kansas City Chiefs stumble and we get that number one seed back? Because right now we got the tiebreaker between KC and Baltimore because of the head-to-head. So we'll see how that shakes out, right? We'll see how that shakes out. Kevin Boltejo, he says, I think turning point was when Josh got hit in the arm on that out of bounds play. What do you think? I didn't see that. I didn't see that. I don't know if you're referring to this past game, Kevin, or if you're referring to previous weeks. But I didn't see that, so I'm not quite sure. But I do know that as far as what I see from Allen, and this is kind of the next chapter, what I see is a guy that is not necessarily 100%, and I think the overthinking of not being 100%, as well as then making mistakes because you're not 100%, and then you make those mistakes, and then you're trying to force it even more because you're playing catch-up, you're in quicksand, Shane Falco quicksand, and you're trying to recover, and that actually makes more mistakes for yourself out on the field. If it was last night's game, I did miss it. I did not see that. Arcadia says DeMar Hamlin is starting to step it up. I got to add on to this, Arcadia. It's a great comment. DeMar Hamlin stepped up big time And a guy that I just feel personally, I don't know how Bills Mafia feels about this, but a guy that I feel is having a phenomenal season, a breakout campaign. He's got my vote to go into the Pro Bowl, is none other than Ed Oliver. I think Ed Oliver has had a phenomenal season, and I think a lot of it does have to do with the Von Miller dimension added onto this defense. I think some of it has to do with the fact that Ed Oliver is actually just finally confident in just getting to the quarterback, getting through the middle. The moves are there, the body type is there, everything physically, mentally. He seems like he is really a well-oiled machine right now as a defensive tackle. And I think a lot of that does have to do with Von Miller on the other side of him. But I want to give Ed Oliver the credit that he deserves, because there were a lot of really nice run-stuffing plays that Ed Oliver created and actually finished, which is really what you want out of a defensive tackle, a guy that can create and then finish what he created. Almost like an artist in that way. You start painting a picture, you finish it, you put it on your wall. Wow, I painted that. Ed Oliver's doing that with stopping the run, with getting to the middle of the pocket and pressuring the quarterback, forcing the quarterback to the outside, or forcing the quarterback to take a few steps back. It's been an awesome evolution to the defense, and I think another guy that I've been hard on. This is a guy that I definitely feel has had his ups and downs as a Buffalo Bill. That's Tremaine Edmunds. I think Edmunds is a much better linebacker with Matt Milano in the lineup than he is without him. And Matt Milano was back. So when Matt Milano's healthy, Tremaine Edmunds, you're going to expect a real good effort from this version of Tremaine Edmunds as opposed to, even last year's. People say, well, I've said that to a lot of people, and I've said that on previous shows, and people say, well, Matt Milano has been on this team the whole time Tremaine Edmunds has been on this team. True, but this year's Tremaine Edmunds is much better. And I think it has a lot to do with his conviction as far as tracing the ball, allowing his instincts to just play his game for him, rather than trying to let his athleticism play his game for him. And that's something that we know he's an athlete, but the instincts haven't always been there for a player that needs to be an instinctive player at the middle linebacker position. That's the quarterback of the defense. You're calling the shots. You're putting people on assignment. Everybody's on their P's and Q's because of you, or they're not because of you. So I think Tremaine Edmunds played a really great game yesterday. This was probably a great return to form for him. And I don't even want to say game. I'm not saying game yesterday. This year, because he was out. So I'm not throwing that necessarily in there. But I'm talking when this guy is healthy, when Matt Milano is healthy, they're firing. So keep our eyes out on that. We'll see that for sure. Chris Madison says it was great to see the run game take the pressure off of Allen. He looked comfortable in the second half. And I definitely think that when we started to see this version of Josh Allen that just wasn't comfortable, I think a lot of it had to do with not just the injury, but the fact that the Bills were over-relying on Allen. They're hoping that Allen can go out there and just throw the ball all over the yard and play sandlot football, and that beats bad teams. And if you're a great team, that can beat teams that are somewhat good, but not quite. But when you're playing a great team, that's not going to win you games. It's just not. I think that's been proven. So, I'm really curious to see how they build upon this from this win, and how Josh Allen can look better in terms of taking what the defense gives him and allowing the guys around him to help him make plays for this offense. I think that's very important for the future of this team. I'm not even talking just this season. I'm talking this season and every year after that, that as long as Josh Allen's on the team, he's got to consistently use the guys that are around him. No more hero ball. It's not 2018. We're not playing with no fans in the stands like we were in 2020. The expectations are high. They should be high. The pressure's high. The pressure should be high because they have played good enough to make people notice. They've played good enough to make people say, wow, this team is really good. They have a chance. This team's never won a Super Bowl before. Can the Bills get back to Super Bowl for the first time since 1993? Josh Allen's checked off a lot of boxes, a lot of firsts since 1993. He's had some of the greatest single seasons as a quarterback that the Buffalo Bills have ever seen. And the Buffalo Bills, they've had a Hall of Famer. So they've had some players on those teams around Jim Kelly that Jim Kelly would be the first to admit he heavily relied on. Andre Reed, Pete Metzelaars, James Lofton, Thurman Thomas. I don't think there's one player that Jim Kelly relied on more in his career than Thurman Thomas. And Thurman Thomas, Hall of Famer in his own right. So do we have a Thurman Thomas on this team? Maybe. I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no. We don't know that yet. Maybe James Cook is the future Thurman Thomas. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that. If that makes sense, you got to use what's at your disposal. And this guy can catch. This guy can run. This guy can break tackles. Granted, I think next season he could get a little bit bigger and be even more dangerous. Granted, he might lose a little bit of speed and shiftiness, but if you put that body at 215, 220, I don't know what his listed weight is, but he looks pretty light on his feet. That could be a whole new dimension that is beyond a running game. You could have a run game, and then you can have an elite running back. Way, way, way different. So I'm very curious to see, how they evolve this offense into what it is. And I made this point on the 27 Buff Phantomonium show. They fired away some comments. What's up, Ryan? What's up, guys? I don't know if it's Scott, Swank, or Jared, but they fired up the hey, which I'm assuming is Scott because he loves to fire that away. I made a point on their Sunday Sessions show that I'm on every Sunday morning prior to a game on Sundays. And the point is this. If the Bills are 7-3, which they are, they lost to the Dolphins. They lost to the Jets. They lost to the Vikings. 3 games that were very close, 2 of which they had a lead in. 3 of which I think they had a lead in at one point against Miami. I'm pretty sure. My memory kind of blocked it out. But at the very least, I know they had a lead against the Jets and they had a lead against the Vikings. So those were 3 games that are in question that they could have easily won, but they let slip away. And I don't think any of us thought that this team had what it took to be 10-0. We thought they'd lose to maybe Tennessee. Thought they'd maybe lose to Kansas City because those teams have been a thorn in our side. But we beat those teams. We beat those teams in a Buffalo Bill form and fashion. We beat them like the Buffalo Bills know how to win games. And then we kind of deviated away from that. We started to make mistakes in certain games, Jets, Vikings in particular. And we hit what's called our adversity. And I think that when we look at the AFC East, that's the mark. We have to win the division. We have to have a winning divisional record. We got to get those games back. We got to split with the Jets. We got to split with the Dolphins, and we got to sweep the Patriots. Very tough to do because the Dolphins are much better. The Jets are better. Not much better, but better. And the Patriots are the Patriots. It seems like Bill Belichick is just a thorn in our side, and he has been for 20-plus years. So none of those tasks, I'm not overlooking those teams. I'm just saying that those are the teams that we really got to circle on the calendar beyond Detroit and say those are big games. Divisional games are always big. What I mean by this is we can still recover through our adversity. Mind you, the teams that I'm mentioning that we have faced adversity against, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots, not yet, but Dolphins, Jets, those teams have not hit their adversity yet. And I'm very curious to see as we get into the horrible winter weather, how will that impact the Miami Dolphins and their quarterback Tua, their fast and flashy wide receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? How will that impact the New York Jets, who, the New York Jets might be starting to hit their adversity with Zach Wilson, who looked horrible yesterday, played one of the worst games I've ever seen More likely than not, Robert Saleh might bench him next week, but they haven't really hit like their true adversity. The Bills have hit their adversity, and they're only going to get better based on the fact that Trey White should be back, based on the fact that they've established a new look offense with this run game, based on the fact that Josh Allen is not even 100%, and they're finding ways to be competitive in games that they've lost, and they're finding ways to win games like yesterday with a new look offense. I'm very encouraged, actually, by the results that I've seen post these losses to the Vikings and the Jets, from what they've said, from how they've reacted. This win was a massive win. I don't want to overstate it. I don't want to understate it, but it was a massive win. We needed to get this one, and we got it. We move forward. Thanksgiving in Detroit, taking on the Detroit Lions. We picked the away locker rooms. We picked the away hotel. We're going to be at that hotel. We're going to be in that locker room, again, playing the Detroit Lions. And the Detroit Lions are not another team that I would look past based on the fact that they've won 3 straight. They have a head coach in Dan Campbell that is gritty, that is a tough SOB, and he wants his team to play like him. Tough, gritty, sound, very little mistakes. But with that, you got a really young team. I would make the comparison that Dan Campbell is somewhat the Donnie Granado of the NFL, and the Sabres, the Buffalo Sabres in the NHL, are what the Detroit Lions are right now in the NFL. They're not a great team. They're not a good team, but they're a young team with a lot of talent. And they're finding out ways to win. They're finding out how they're going to lose, and how they're going to lose, how they're going to respond to those losses, and how are they going to find ways to win with what they have. And they're relishing. Any team that has beaten us this season has relished the challenge of playing against the Buffalo Bills, knowing the expectations that you have, that I have, that you had, that I had prior to the season starting, as well as right here, right now, for the future of this team. This is one of the best teams in football, top to bottom, on paper. It's about putting it on the field. You can't be a good team on paper. On paper, it doesn't matter. On paper, it doesn't matter. It's got to be applied to the field. And I think the Bills have shown that they can apply their greatness on the field. Just got to win 1 week at a time. This Thursday, Thanksgiving, I can't wait for it against the Detroit Lions. I think that this is one that they should win. But, again, lost to the Jets, lost to the Dolphins, lost to the Vikings, who just got shellacked by the Dallas Cowboys. And that's a team that's a force in and of itself, with Micah Parsons playing off the chain, and Dak Prescott I've always been a fan of. Looking at the NFC, there's a lot of teams that I really like right now in terms of how they're playing. I'm not going to root for Dallas, but they got a pretty damn good team. I'm not going to root for the 49ers, but they got a pretty damn good team. Tampa Bay, if they can keep Tom Brady upright, that division's horrible. It's anybody's division with how bad that division is. It's a little bit of around the NFL, as I like to get into it, around the NFL right here, right now. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Buffalo Bills bounce back, move to 7-3. With that, I'm going to go to around the NFL. Let's talk about some of these games that have taken place this week. There's a lot to discuss with some of these scores. And yeah, we know the Bills beat the Browns 31-23, but I like to talk about the National Football League. This is the league right here. This is it. This is the league. So tonight we got the 49ers and the Cardinals. The 49ers are 5-4. The Arizona Cardinals are 4-6. That one kicks off in about 10 minutes. The Tennessee Titans getting past the Green Bay Packers on Thursday by a score of 27-17. Ryan Tannehill did his thing. Conservative, straight to the point, vanilla. There's a guy by the name of Treylon Burks that is back. He's healthy. I assume that he's not owned in many fantasy leagues. If he is unowned, if he is available, I say you go out and get him. The Chicago Bears losing 24-27. Justin Fields suffering a left shoulder injury as the Bears fall to 3-8. Surprisingly, the Atlanta Falcons and Marcus Mariota are now 5-6. The Carolina Panthers fall to 3-8 with a very weird game between the Ravens and the Panthers. Carolina couldn't run the ball for jack squat. The Baltimore Ravens looked very lost out there in a 13-3 win. It didn't look dominant. It wasn't pretty, but a win's a win. The Washington Commanders get past the Houston Texans by a score of 23-10. You got the return coming up of Chase Young, one of the better pass rushers in the NFL, and I really like what Washington has in terms of their front seven. I really like what Washington did with their quarterback switcheroo, with the fact that they went with Taylor Heinicke. I think Taylor Heinicke is a competitor. He's got grit. He's got not as much talent as the next quarterback, but he's got heart, and the team loves the guy. So it seems like he's lit a fire under their asses. They just beat the Philadelphia Eagles. Beating the Houston Texans is not really much of a feat these days, but a win's a win. The Philadelphia Eagles eke one out against the Indianapolis Colts, 17-16. Jeff Saturday's Colts. Jeff Saturday now 1-1 as the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. The New England Patriots getting past the New York Jets by a score of 10-3 off of a punt return in the final 10 seconds of the game. One of the worst second half offenses that I have ever seen from Robert Saleh's New York Jets. Zach Wilson is in trouble, guys. Zach Wilson's in trouble. He might not start next week. He's got Mike White looking behind his shoulder, looking over his shoulder, and he's turning around and he sees Mike White right behind him. I think Zach Wilson could be benched this week, and I would bench him. If I was Robert Saleh calling the shots, I would bench him. The LA Rams losing to the New Orleans Saints. Andy Dalton getting a W for the Saints. Matt Stafford going out with a concussion. He'll be in concussion protocol all week long. We'll hear more and more about the severity of his concussion, but Matt Stafford out in that one for a time, and obviously that hurt their chances. They're without Matt Stafford more likely than not next week, and they're without one of my favorite players in the National Football League, Cooper Kupp, with an ankle injury. He had surgery this week. He's going to be out the rest of the season and probably some of next season too. I hope Cooper Kupp comes back the same player. The Detroit Lions winning against the New York Giants. Brian Daboll, the great Brian Daboll, now 7-3 as he's fallen off with the last few weeks. I think the Giants have lost 2 of their last 3. And the Giants have lost 2 of their last 3. The Detroit Lions have won their last 3. So 4-6 for the Lions. Dan Campbell is clawing and scratching his way towards keeping his job. The Las Vegas Raiders beating the Denver Broncos 22-16. Derek Carr and Devontae Adams got it done. And I'm not a Cowboys fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I was a little bit shocked that after the game, Melvin Gordon was cut after he fumbled the ball. He gets cut the next day. He's was waived today. So we'll see if any team puts in a claim for him in the next stop, possibly, maybe not, of his career. The game of the week, the performance of the week, no doubt about it, was the Dallas Cowboys thrashing the Minnesota Vikings, crushing it against the Minnesota Vikings, 40-3. And the guy that deserves a lot of shine, number 20 for the Dallas Cowboys, Tony Pollard, man. This guy is a monster. He is great. I love watching this guy run the football. Ezekiel Elliott was back, but he did take the back seat again to Tony Pollard. But hey, production at the running back position. Look what Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott can do for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not saying that I want to see the same offensive running back centered offense like what Dallas has got, but look what that run game can do when you have 2 running backs that are working efficiently. Takes a lot of pressure off of your quarterback and allows your quarterback to just let's just get it to my guys, let them make the plays, and watch my stats pile up. The Cincinnati Bengals getting past the Pittsburgh Steelers 37-30. This was a great game. Kenny Pickett, Joe Burrow going back and forth, tit for tat. Joey B gets it done. 37-30, the Bengals moved to 6-4. And I'll say this, if I'm more worried, what opponent left in the Bills' schedule am I really, quote-unquote, worried about that's left? I'd say Cincinnati. Outside of the division, Cincinnati's a game that we got to get at the end of the year. And the Kansas City Chiefs sneaking one out against the LA Chargers, 30-27. The Chiefs have the number 1 seed in the AFC. Makes me sick. So there you have it. I am ready to watch this game. 3 minutes to Monday Night Football kickoff. Thank you so much for tuning into the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. That is the Buffalo Bills post-game show. The Bills getting past the Cleveland Browns with a bounce-back effort, 31-23. The Bills moved to 7-3. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. Take care.